Whew. Well, that was a pretty loaded day. Alright. I'm gonna finish off what I was doing in Echoes there, and then afterwards I'm gonna do some Cal studying, because, hey, tests tomorrow, oh, that's fun. Well, that's what I need once to get into sciences. Alright. Just gonna put that over here, and whoop. In you go. Oh, that's a shame. Alright. Oh my god. Oh, okay, they're good. They're all okay. Thank God. Spooked for a while there.
You have no idea how happy this makes me. Right back at you, sister. That chump Jetta's magic sent us off to who knows where. We were surrounded by terrors and junk. I thought we were dead meat.
I thought you guys were just done for sure.
Voice kind of talking, I guess. So we followed it because
why not? Like, I love writing in this game. Good lord.
A voice? It must have been Milla.
No, this cannot
happen.
happen.
It's happening.
Fortune seal broken. Foul Milla, Duma is your brother. Would you truly betray your own kin?
Stand down, Jetta. Your schemes end here and now. Prepare to pay for your atrocities.
Oh, come on now. That's a bit hurtful, isn't it?
You're both disgusting heretics. How dare you wish harm on Duma?
Open your eyes, Jetta. No matter how it pains you, you must see the truth. Duma's gone mad. He brings only suffering to his people now.
Yep.
This is the divine
That's
dragon's
basically it in a
fate.
nutshell.
Silence, girl. You know nothing of what you speak. And if suffering is the gods' will, what of it? Without their strength at its foundation, Valentia cannot sustain life.
Not untrue.
It's time for us all to stand on our own feet. To live as free men and women.
Foolish boy.
I like that conviction.
You truly believe such heresy to be possible?
It is possible. We've come all this way to prove it.
Presumptuous human child. Go on then. Prove me wrong. Show me the strength to stand alone. Show me the true limits
I
of
will.
man.
Maybe not now, but... Oh my. This is really shaping up to be really something, isn't it? Alright. Let me just check this out. Maybe do some starting turns. And then we'll get to Cal 1 studying and stuff. So. Good fighters, gold knights. Ooh, there's a lot of bog there. Oh great, Mogals. Legetta. Oh god. Alright, I think I'll just put some flyers around there and oh! Bow knights. Ugh. God. Ooh. This might actually be a little tough. Who would have thought that? Alright, well. I guess I might as well just go ahead and get started. And then we'll see what happens from there. Whoa. It's big bad Duma. This looks like he's seen better days. Well, good time as any to put him down then. Oh my god. Oh my god. What is this music? What? That's a hell of a first impression, good lord. Okay, let's just navigate over down here. Let's get rid of these Mogals, for starters, and...
Well, hell. I've come this far. Might as well see the damn thing through to the end, lass.
Where did that come from? Okay, wait a minute. Do they all have this? Let me see.
The greatest of powers is but one mistake away from utter tragedy. We know that all too well. And I refuse
Oh my
to
god,
stand
no,
aside and
again,
watch it
fuck this.
happen.
I am so in on this. Let's go! I then would go on to play until the end of the game and subsequently tank the Cal 1 test the next day. True story, and I don't regret it. Now what I just showed you was a very fond memory of a very special game. And $10 says you know what it is just by reading the title. But why don't I go ahead and open this up and show you what it's all about. Oh man, I'm excited today. Are you excited? Cause I'm excited. And why is that the case? Cause today it's all about this super cool dank video game called Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valentia. Now, what is it about this game that tickles me funny bone and gets my gamer brain mega stimulated? Honestly, I don't even know where to start, viewer. There's just so much to unpack about this experience. It's crazy. Well, alright, I lied. I do know, actually. Let's start with a little bit of background information first. Believe it or not, I'm not actually excited about this game because it's my personal baby's first Fire Emblem game, if you will. No, I got my start in the series back with Fate's Birthright, which many FE vets and myself looking back would agree that's not exactly the best place to start considering these games' divisive reputation. I mainly bought into it because I always wanted to try a Fire Emblem but was scared of its hardcore, permadeath, cerebral appearance. But you know something? Fates had a really good marketing campaign behind it, and that helped sell the game to me. I then would go on to try the other routes, Awakening, and a little bit of Heroes. The latter of which didn't last too long because my phone was breaking all the time. And after catching FE fever for about a year, I took a bit of a break after the FE Direct of 2017 rolled around. The announcement of a new Fire Emblem on Switch, which would become 3 houses, and 2 new spin-off titles at the time, those being Heroes and Warriors, certainly got me excited, but it was the reveal of Echoes that certainly captivated my interest. And without a doubt, these 2 games were great, and got me into the franchise something fierce. But you have to remember, this is an old franchise, and one that has changed a lot over the years. And as for myself, I was a particular fan of the more recent endeavors, so I had never been truly exposed to something like this. Something that had modern sensibilities with a classic, more vintage backbone behind it, to meld into this. And given the fact that this was a remake of an old game, and an old game that's divisive at that, its gameplay, it spooked me a bit. But you see, that's not why I didn't pick it up day one. The reason that didn't happen is simple. The release schedule was just poorly timed on my part, because at the time, I was running around town as a 17-year-old broke kid. But getting back into it, I managed to get the game around August of that year, and as I booted it up for the first time, the first thing that caught my attention were the visual and auditory aspects. Because for a late 3DS game, its sound and voice direction and execution were easily among the finest I've ever seen. The art style from freelancer Hidari is just so good! Don't get me wrong. The previous 3DS games' art were nice, detailed, and colorful, but something about the shading rubs me the wrong way. That and the fact it feels very samey and overly exaggerated in a few places. Meanwhile, I think that Echoes' style is very distinct and eye-catching. I think it does a particularly great job at capturing a certain sense of age in the environments and character art, as if you were dusting off an old and worn down history book that still has enough color to make the illustrations just a bit more lively. It's exactly what it needs to be for this game, which, as a reminder, is supposed to be a remake of an NES game, all while setting up the tone of the story quite nicely. And it seems to many other aspects of the game, like UI, overworld maps, and cutscenes. It's honestly what I see an FE game looking like to me, remake or otherwise. And bonus! The varied character and monster designs, colors, and poses are just the icing on the cake. I'll touch on characters in a later section, but I'll quickly mention an example here. I really like Alm's design in general as the protag of the game. It gives him a grassroots kind of vibe, which is a rarity for a main lord in the series. Additionally, his pose and expression through just his pointing is striking, exuding his dutiful and warrior-like nature. Here's another one for you, Pala's in-game portrait specifically. The render's fine, if a bit basic, but the brushing of the hair while in that similar pose to the render makes me swoon. The artwork gives you inklings to characters' personalities, methinks, inklings that are further fleshed out by the awesome voice acting. I remember when this game first came out and people were losing their minds about how good the localization was. And I gotta say, I'm on that boat too. God, there's just so much charm, charisma, and passion put into this project that it really gets you to care about the world presented before you. Throw in an auto-scrolling text, a first in the series I might add, and full voice acting for even the NPCs, and we're golden, man!
Will the grand story of your life be how you met the end of a brigand's axe?
Well, ain't you fancy?
I'll go. I'll join the Deliverance.
You?
Oh, what the hell? You can't do that. Wait, can you do that?
Because this is not staying clear. This is the exact opposite of staying clear.
Rudolph, die!
Look, to this day, I'm still in awe of the game's presentation. It just blows my mind that a game on a portable system with such limited audio and visual capabilities managed to provide such an elevated experience. Hey, I got a question for you. Don't you think that covering behind a tree or even a small little forested area would help with dodging enemy attacks? Yeah, I think that would help. I think that would help a great deal. But apparently, most other Fire Emblems would disagree because they place higher emphasis on a rock, paper, scissors mechanic rather than basic terrain. Well, luckily, Echoes is different. Very different even. And sometimes, I think that's worth celebrating. So on that note, why don't we just go ahead and talk about gameplay? So the game's pretty and sounds sexy. Big deal. What if we were trying to uncover a solid, meaty video game behind it all? What do we find? What are we left with? Well, let me tell you, this is some prime quality tactics RPG we're looking at. Wait a minute. So let me briefly break down how this game and many others in the series operate. These games are classified as turn-based tactical RPGs. But that's a lot of nerd technobabble, so let's simplify that definition. Ever played chess? Well, I mean, which schmuck hasn't played it, but anyway. The core principles are the same. You've got pieces to move around the map, and the game's AI also has some as well, trying to take yours out, and naturally, we don't want that. The RPG or math mechanics of the game take up the form of various stats that influence how strong or weak a unit is in comparison to the enemies. And as the player, it's up to you to recognize the unique strengths and weaknesses, equipment, skills, and more of your various characters to carve a path to victory! Now, what makes this game different from the rest of the 14 other games? Well, I like to boil it down to 3 things the game emphasizes greatly: terrain, inventory space, and combat arts. Remember that rock, paper, scissors mechanic I mentioned outside? Well, see, many FEs before this one had that mechanic manifest itself through swords, lances, and axes, while also incorporating other weapons like magic and projectiles in later games. Meanwhile, terrain in those games was basically an afterthought, offering negligible bonuses despite, for some reason, going out of their way to go on and on and on about how important and vital to survival they are in the prologue chapters. While in this installment, various terrain like forests, forts, thrones, and more hugely benefit your units that it's game changing. And what I mean is that they provide buffs to, crucially, avoid rates. And remember, in Fire Emblem or any tactics game, you have no control about how battles play out. Therefore, you want hostile attacks to miss outright rather than deal any kind of damage. Doubly so in Valentia, where even if your defense would make an attack deal no damage normally, you'll still take potshots and you might even die from it. Terrain can also apply health restorations, or on the flip side, limit movement and damage you. It also goes both ways since the enemy is equally affected by terrain, most of the time. But this still adds a huge amount of unpredictability and dynamic outcomes to maps that otherwise, if I'm being honest with myself, would be pretty boring otherwise. So, moving along, the small inventory space certainly was odd at first. Normally the other games would typically have each unit carry about 5 items at a time. Meanwhile, Echoes opted to only keep this inventory space down to 1. This extends to food, weapons, shields, rings, etc. And while it was cumbersome at first, it did open the door to heavily utilize trading, something that I usually overlook in other games. It particularly is very satisfying when taking out a chain of baddies by passing along weapons like say a strong silver sword to take them out with multiple units at a time. It also incentivizes you to commit to particular weapons thanks to the final change, combat arts. Now you see, these are really special. They act as the central risk-reward mechanic of the game. Have a unit keep using a weapon to eventually learn new arts that each consume a set amount of HP to grant a unique effect on a single attack. They range from a simple stronger attack, something that heals a little bit, something that grants bonus damage to specific classes, and the list goes on and on and on, you get the idea. Some of these are more favored than others. Like personally, I would much rather have better odds of avoiding attacks outright when striking rather than simply repositioning after an assault, but each has a use and should at least be considered as you discover more. And again, this is just another example as to why this game is dynamic and appealing to me. All this put together makes Echoes distinct from its contemporaries and, honestly, way more interesting. I've talked about all of this and I haven't even mentioned how much I prefer the more open-ended design of the game. I haven't even mentioned how cool dungeon exploring is and how great of a supplement it is to the rest of the game. I haven't even mentioned how much of a time saver the ability to rewind turns is. God, there's just so much to unpack and I could go on for hours. But I feel like I've said enough for now, so let's wrap this up by discussing the last point, story. Me, oh my, I have to talk about the epic tale of Valentia and the series of events that took a divided land and brought its pieces together to form a unified whole? Oh, wow, I mean, I don't even know where to start. Well, how about a plot synopsis first? And we're going to use this book here to guide us through it. And, this totally isn't the art book that I'm just using as a prop here. No, it's not that at all. This is totally legit, okay? Just shush. Alright. Let's begin. The setting takes place on the continent of Valentia, a land that long ago was split in twain, ruled by the sibling gods Milla and Duma. One ruled to the rich, warm south, providing many blessings and great comfort, nearly driving the people to dependency, while the other ruled the chilling, harsh north and dictated that man wouldn't thrive and grow strong without hardship, making the people seem almost uncaring towards others, a little standoffish, you could say. For a while, relations between the two gods and their lands went well, with both never overstepping into the other's territory to avoid conflict and turmoil. But too good never flies. And now, millennia removed from the establishment of the Divine Accord, both lands are beginning to show signs of decline. Huh, that rhymed. Neato. With Zofia to the south having difficulties during harvest seasons, and Regale to the north brutally taking over the south to expand their reach, while monsters known as terrors are starting to show up left, right, and center. It's in this setting where we meet our two protagonists, Alm and Celica. One's a kind, duty-bound, and humble farm boy raised to be a great fighter by a supposed, while the other's a soft-spoken, generous, and headstrong priestess who spends her days at a remote priory on a small island. Novus Island, to be specific. Now, believe it or not, these two actually do share some history together, because for a while, at least when they were kids, they lived in Ram Village together. Oh, and the game's not at all subtle with showing that they liked each other. So there's that. But why are they separate? Well, simply put, when Celica was living in Ram Village, one time she was spotted by some Zofia turncoat knights, and it forced Mycen to have to fend them off and send her away over to that priory that I mentioned before. Now, why is that the case? We don't know. But let's get back to our summary. Years pass, and events are set into motion for Alm when Lucas, a soldier fighting for the Deliverance, basically Zofia's resistance/liberation army, makes his way to Alm's home in Ram Village seeking the aid of Mycen. But when Mycen refuses to help, this causes Alm to volunteer to fight in his stead along with his group of fellow villager friends. For Celica, her calling is to investigate the reason for why terrors are on the rise, why the crops are failing, among other things, believing that Milla's failing blessings are a result of her presence somehow being interfered with. And thus, the goals are established. Alm wanting to liberate Zofia by force, and Celica seeking a way to end the fighting and poverty by divine intervention. And I gotta say, following these two stories play out in unison with a healthy amount of world building coupled with a strong premise, that really got its hooks in me in 2017. And the way the game gradually hints to and eventually reveals the protagonist's significance in the world was super enticing stuff too. Because unlike the past two games where things happened almost independently of the main characters' goals, Echoes' story unfolds entirely because of the characters' actions, making it a very character-driven experience as a whole. And fortunately for us, this cast is something to behold. So, this freaking cast of characters is something else, I tell ya. When you play through the game, each one gets a sizable amount of screen time during the story and gameplay sessions, and that gives them a lot of staying power. It's pretty easy to end the game knowing what their likes, dislikes, goals, morals, and more are very well. And then there's... I'll get to that. But first, I'm gonna summarize what makes this cast memorable. Now, unlike most FEs, the Echoes gang is actually quite small. I'm talking like 30 characters here compared to even the last two 3DS titles with their 50+ list. I feel this emphasizes a focus on quality over quantity. Each character is fully voiced too, ranging from short quotes when eating food,
That hit the spot.
or selecting them on the battle map,
Just say the word.
to fully voiced support conversations, and of course, story cutscenes. You'll get to see the heroes interact most often, but the villains of the game are also excellent, crafting personalities that represent twisted versions of the protagonist's strongest traits that change in parallel with them, to the charismatic, bad to the bone pieces of work, and even the oh-so-popular sympathetic villain. One of which, namely Rudolph, I hesitate to even call a villain in the first place, since without going too much into spoilers, he does the wrong thing for the right reasons. But arguably, the strongest trait of the characters in Echoes is how well they illustrate the biggest concept of the story, clashing ideologies. There's Alm and Celica's differences in the proposed solutions as mentioned, but there's also Berkut's belief that nobles should rule over commoners due to status and ability, with Alm, a commoner himself, coming in to directly challenge that mentality. Then there's Jetta's and Celica's similar beliefs in divine intervention, with the difference being one wants Duma to have absolute rule to maintain the status quo, while the other simply wants Milla to quote-unquote fix the problem. And on that topic, you have the very nature of Valentia as a land and its gods themselves. I mean, I can go on and on about these personalities, but for time's sake, I'll highlight 3. Alm's great, man. He breaks the mold of most FE protagonists by not being a noble, because that distinction goes to Ike, but rather his upbringing and worldview. You see, for him, he isn't fueled by responsibilities or expectations that are thrust upon him, but rather he believes in his own ability to help the war effort thanks to his training. Despite constantly being reminded by many others that he's a villager, and therefore in some people's eyes unremarkable, he doesn't back down. Seeing him rise and fall throughout the story has a certain rhythm to it, which makes it fun and captivating to see. The conduit for Alm's calling, Lucas, is also very interesting as well. I mean, to me, this guy is just a huge mood, man. He's very calm, steadfast, and rational, almost to a standoffish degree. I think I particularly like him when he discusses his past, or is mocked as being a backwater noble. He just so doesn't give 2 shits about it. He just takes it in stride. Oh, and this comeback's just golden.
I'll rip that traitorous tongue from your throat! Then you'll finally have the truth in your grasp.
Okay, I can't hold it in anymore. I need to talk about Pala now because, oh my god, she's just wonderful, man! Okay, so I already mentioned that I really dig her design, but Jesus Christ, I think I'm in love with her character even more. So her premise is simple, okay? She's a Pegasus Knight, elder sister to 2 others, where in general, that class is known to be a bit frail but fast. But surprise, she's got great attack and defense and great growth rates in those stats to boot. That already is appealing to me. But then you add in the fact that her family lost their parents while her sisters were too young to really remember them, and she basically takes it upon herself to look after and raise both Katria and Est, all while trying to become a White Wing, and man, you've got me hook, line, and sinker, my dude. And here's the kicker, because when you watch the supports play out and interact with her in towns, she just comes off as being super chill, mature, and caring. A tad hardened, but without a trace of pessimism or spitefulness, and I just think that's impressive. But it gets even better, because you see, the 3 of them aren't from Valentia and have appeared in other games, where it's shown that Est has a relationship with this dude Abel and is married, right? Well, guess what? Pala has a crush on him too, even though that's more of insider knowledge. But still, she knows those forbidden feelings are just eating away at her, and she always tries to push them down. And as someone who has learned it's always a good idea to lay out your feelings to move on, that infuriates me. But god damn if I'm not completely enthralled in the ambiguity of that idea. TLDR, she's just super interesting to me and 3-dimensional. And now that I got that out of my system, here are my final thoughts. When I saw Martha Roy in Smash Bros, I was interested in playing Fire Emblem. When I encountered those great ads for Fates, I wanted to play Fire Emblem. But when I played Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valentia, I became a legit fan of FE. I thought to myself after finishing it, this is the one. I really like this and I want to follow it now, for real. And I was scared of even buying into it because of its lineage. But this game showed me why people really enjoyed FE before it got popular. And it made me understand why Awakening and Fates divided the fanbase, while I was firmly on the side of modern FE. What with its overtly more extreme anime-like style, tropes, and stories. Echoes changed my perception for good. It wasn't a stupidly easy game to break. It wasn't navigating through an extremely messy story. And it certainly didn't expose me to characters that were one-note box tickers. It got me to care about its setting and characters. It got me addicted to its gameplay loop, and it got me jamming hard to its soundtrack and soaking up all those insane production values. And overall, it got me to consider it as one of my favorite games ever. And that's why I wanted to gush about it here. Hopefully get you interested, and why it means so much to me.